in opposition to that, most doctors, because of how they're trained and they see disease and they want to cut it out, they want to burn it out, they want to medicate it out, that people become more disconnected with their bodies and with their
Right.
feelings. Because maybe what they say is ignored, or, oh, that's not relevant, or, so it seems like the practitioner really can steer how someone sees their own health and how they live.
I was talking to a friend of mine who's a neurologist not too long ago, and he was telling me that he had an experience. He had been working with the residents, in training, and he went with this. He was called by this one patient with this resident to come and see them. He was going into the patient's room. But when he got to the room, the resident was standing outside the door, and he says, "All right, let's go in." And she says, "Oh, there's no sense of going in there. I don't need to go in there." And he said, "What?" She said, "He has Alzheimer's. He doesn't know anything that I'm saying." And he
Mm,
said, "Now, wait a minute. Don't you realize that in that room you have two patients? You have his wife who understand everything that you're saying and will take the time and love and everything to do what she could do to help her husband understand it. And you've got two patients in that room, not just one. And not only that, but you have to touch him. You have to make contact with him. It's a sad thing that medicine has gotten technologically so involved with its own technology that it
mm,
has forgotten that the only healing that really happens deeply within a person is when there is a connection with the physician without and the physician within. There's that loving relationship. When that happens, wonderful things happen. If that doesn't happen, if you don't touch the patient, my youngest son is a ophthalmologist in Flagstaff, and he said when he was in his residency, he saw one of the doctors that was going on rounds with him. When he took blood pressures, he didn't just reach over and take the patient's arm and do the blood pressure. He put his arm around the patient in a hug and then did that. And he said, when I saw that, I said to myself, that's the kind of doctor I want to be. So
mm.
it's we as physicians, I think, who have been doing this a long time, have the responsibility to allow ourselves to be the ones who can carry the joy and the bliss of working with medicine. So it's not just technology. It's not just the amazing tools that we have now to work with. It's how those tools are being used. And
Mm.
so when I was working with patients, I had patients who come to me and say, because I had sent them to a specialist or something, they'd say, but they didn't listen to me. So then I
Oh,
would
yeah.
take what they had gotten from that physician and we would interpret it so that they could understand what it was.
Something you said earlier. I just spoke to someone today that talked about the disease of aging. I said, what? They said, oh, aging is considered a disease. So, I mean, that kind of plays into, what you're saying about, how modern medicine and how medicine, I guess, for a long time has looked at things. Because not
Yeah.
only it's a war, but even aging itself is a war. It's a thing to fight. It's a disease.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts when someone says that aging is a disease?
I say, I don't think so. I'm calling it aging into health. You see,
Hmm.
I think right now, my eyes, I have glaucoma and I've had cataracts and so on. I can't see very well. My eyesight is poor, but there's nothing wrong with my insight. In fact, it's gotten better. So I think that we use what we can use and make it be what it needs to be. And I call that aging into health. Who has a right to tell us that we're going to die when we're 80 years old, or to say we can't have a president, all that stuff? I mean, I went to Afghanistan to work with birthing women in Afghanistan who were the maternal birth rate maternal death rate in Afghanistan at that time was higher than any place else in the world. And my brother was created future generations, which was doing this kind of work around the world. And he asked me, I was getting ready to retire. I was 86 years old. I was getting ready to retire from my practice. So I went over to Afghanistan and worked with those women, and we were able to change their maternal mortality rate. I didn't change it. I taught the women what they needed to know, and they taught them, and then they changed it.